guys, I'm back. Same day for me, different day for you guys. So I wanted to apologize for the first video that I did. I cut off part of the screen. I'm going to be more careful about that this time. So we are going to move on to lesson 9.2, which is page number 501. And we're going to talk about how to relate hundredths in decimals now. So we did tenths before, now we're going to do hundredths. So on our place value chart, remember we use the word and for our decimal point, and you've got your ones place and your tens place. And on the other side of the ones place, you have tenths. And I have underlined the THS and the S over here. So the difference is just the THS sound at the end of the word instead of the S. On the other side of the tens, we have the hundreds. On the other side of the tenths, we have the hundredths place. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So our essential question says, how can you record hundredths as fractions and decimals? So here we go. In the 2008 Summer Olympic Games, the winning time in the men's 100-meter butterfly race was only 1/100th second faster than the second place time. What decimal represents this fraction of a second? So if you think about a second, 1/1000, how fast that is, and you divide that second into 100 pieces. The first place guy beat the second place guy by 1 of those hundredths of a second. So super fast. Okay. First it tells us to circle the numbers we need to use, and this is what we're going to need to use, the 1/100. You can write hundredths as fractions or decimals. So one way is to use a model and a place value chart. So on the fraction side, we're going to shade 1/100th of the model. Now remember, when you're talking about fractions for the fraction line, we can use the words out of. So we're going to shade 1 out of 100. So out of this 100, we're going to just shade 1. So that's what I'm going to do now. Let's see here. I'm going to go ahead and make this a little bigger. Okay. So I'm going to shade 1 of those 100ths. And the way that you would write that as a fraction is 1/100th. Not 1/100th, because this doesn't say 100th, it's just hundredth. So if you put a 1 above it, it would be 1/100th. Okay? We'll talk about that in a second. Okay, so on the place value chart, they've already stuck the 1 in the hundredths place, but notice that they have a 0 in the whole, so 0 whole seconds, and a 0 in the 10th place. So if we didn't put that 0 in the 10th place, then we wouldn't have anything to, it would just look like 0.1, and that's tenths. So we have to put that 0 in there to mark that place. So 0 wholes, 0 tenths, and then 1/100th of a second. So 1 out of 100, or 1/100th, is the same as 0 wholes, 0 tenths, and 1/100th. On both of those, though, we just read them as 1/100th. Okay. You can also, of course, use a number line, just like we did yesterday, or a few minutes ago for me. Okay, so they've already done all the fractions up here, and they've broken that number line into 100 parts. And they've only written the fractions, if you'll notice, they've written 0 hundredths, then 10, then 20, then 30. They wouldn't really have room to write all of those hundredths if they put each individual, but they're pointing out to you with these arrows here and saying this little tiny line right here is 100th, just like the decimal place is 100th. Okay, so they're going to have us do tens and write the decimal for tens. So 10 hundredths is the same as, so if you think about this for a second, let me get my 10 out of 100, and that is 1/10, and so it's a little bit trickier because actually let's do this. Let's go do these first 9. So let's go 0.0, 0.01, 0.02. So this is 100th, 200ths. This of course is 0 hundredths. And then we have 0.03, which is 3 hundredths. And then 4 hundredths, 5 hundredths, 6 hundredths, 7 hundredths, 8 hundredths, 9 hundredths, and 10 hundredths. So let's look for a second and go 0.04 is a 4 in the hundredths place. 0.05 is 5 hundredths. 0.06 is 6 hundredths. 0.07 is 7 hundredths. 0.08 is 8 hundredths. 0.09 is 9 hundredths. Now, when we get to the 10, remember we can only put one digit in each of these places. So we have to carry the 1 up to the 10th place because we've got 0 wholes, but we can't put 2 digits in a single place. So to record 10, we'd put a 1 in the 10th place and a 0 in the hundredths place because, let me show you, remember when we did one-tenth, and the equivalent is 10 hundredths, and the only difference in this and this is I added a 0 here and here. Well, if I go down here and put 1/10, let me take this off. So I've got, that equals 0.0. Okay, so the only difference from this guy, this side to this side, is we added a, whoops, 0 here, 0 here, and 0 here, okay? So I don't want to confuse you, but I want you to understand that we can't put 2 digits in the hundredths place, so we go and carry the 1. When we get to 10 hundredths, we carry the 1 up to the 10th place, and we put a 0 in the hundredths place. It's also kind of like, or it's the same as if we were working with value whole numbers, and we got to 9 ones, and we wanted to add one more, we would have 110 and change that 9 into a 0. So it's the same thing, we just carry the 1 over to the tens place. Okay, so we have 10 hundredths is the same as 0.10, 20 hundredths is 0.20, 30 hundredths is 0.30, 40 hundredths is 0.40, 50 hundredths is 0.50, 60 hundredths is 0.60, 70 hundredths is 0.70, 80 hundredths is 0.80, and 90 hundredths is 0.90. Make sure that's all showing up. Okay. So, what names the same amount as 1/100th? 0.0 with a 1 in the hundredths place. So the winning time was 0.01 or 1/100th of a second faster. Okay. Alicia won her 400-meter freestyle race by 4 and 2500 seconds. How can you write this mixed number as a decimal? So first we're going to shade the models to show 4 and 2500ths. I'm going to try something here. This didn't work real well when I tried it before. Okay, maybe it'll work this time. So I'm going to shade that whole thing, this whole thing, this whole thing, and these are our 4 holes that I'm shading now. And then on the last one, it's going to be 25 out of 100. So I'm going to go 1, 2 tenths, and then 5. Okay, so I have shaded 4 holes and 2500ths. So as a mixed number, that would be 4 and 2500ths. And we read that as 4 and 2500ths. Okay. For a decimal, we're going to put a 4 in the ones place, because 4 whole seconds. And then 25 is made up of 2 tenths and then 5 hundredths. Okay, so to get to 25, remember this is a hundredth. So to get to 25, we have 2 tenths, so a 2 in the tenths place, and then 5 of these little guys, the little hundredths. So 25 is made up of 2 tenths and 5 hundredths. Okay, so we would write that as 4.25, and we would read it as 4 and, there's our and word, 25 hundredths. And they've got the word hundredths written right there for you if you're not sure how to spell it. Okay. We can also use a number line here, and we know that 25 is between 20 and 30. And so if we look, this would be 4.10, 4 and 10 hundredths, 4 and 20 hundredths, 4 and 25 hundredths, 4 and 30 hundredths, 4 and 40 hundredths, 4 and 50 hundredths, 4 and 60 hundredths, 4 and 70 hundredths, 4 and 80 hundredths, 4 and 90 hundredths. Okay, so 4.25 names the same amount as 4 and 25 hundredths. So Alicia won her race by 4 and 25 hundredths seconds. Okay, shade the model to show 31 hundredths. So if you think about 31 for a minute, that is 3 of these tenths and 1 of these hundredths. So let's shade first. So 3 tenths and then 1 hundredth. So that is 0 holes, whoops, 0 holes and 3 tenths and 1 hundredth, so 0.31. Write the fraction or mixed number and the decimal shown by, write the fraction or mixed number and the decimal shown by the model. So we can count here, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tenths and then 8 hundredths. So that's going to be 68 out of 100 are shaded, and then that's 0.68, 68 hundredths as a decimal. Over here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 8 out of 100, or 8 hundredths, and then 0 ones, 0 tenths, and 8 hundredths. Okay? Normally here I would say, are you with me? Any questions? We're going to keep moving. Okay. So they have given us this dot right here that they're wanting us to figure out. So I know that these bigger lines represent the tenths. So this would be like 6 and 10 hundredths, and this would be 6 and 20 hundredths. So I'm looking at what is right before 20. What number comes before 20? 19. So this would be 6 and 19 hundredths, or 6.19. Okay? Again, this is the on your own section. If you want to pause this video, do these problems, and then come back and check and see how you did, you can do that. So we're looking at number 5, and they've got 1 whole model shaded, and then we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 tenths, and then 3 hundredths. So 1 and 83 hundredths here, or 1 and 83 hundredths here, 1.83. Over here, we've got 0 whole model shaded, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 75 shaded. So 75 hundredths or 75 hundredths, because again, 75 is made up of 7 whole tenths and 5 of the little hundredths. So that's why we write it like 7 in the tenths place and 5 in the hundredths place. Okay. Over here they're wanting us to look at this little dot here, and so I know that the bigger lines represent tens, so I'm going to go, this would be 10 over 100, 20 over 100, 30 over 100, 40 over 100. And so this would be 47. So 47 hundredths, or 0.47. Okay. They want us to write the fraction or mixed number as a decimal. So we have 0 wholes, since this is a fraction and not a mixed number. 9 means there's 0 tenths, and 9 in the hundredths place. We have 4 wholes on this one, and 55 is made up of 5 tenths and then 5 hundredths, so 4.55. 10 hundredths would be the 0 wholes, and that would be 1 tenth and 0 hundredths. And then 9 and 33 hundredths, and 0 wholes in 92 hundredths, and then we have 14 and 16 hundredths. Okay, to me, I think the trickiest part is knowing that you have to, when you have like 10 over 100, and you're trying to write that in the hundredths place, because you can't, since you can't fit 2 digits in that hundredths place, you have to carry that 1 to the tenths place. So the way that you would write 10 hundredths as hundredths is 1 tenth and 0 hundredths. Even though we're talking about hundredths, another thing that I want to point out is when you're reading these numbers, if there is a digit in the hundredths place, then you're going to read that decimal as hundredths. If there is a decimal or a number in the hundredths place, you're going to read it as hundredths, and not say the tenths. Okay, so what I mean by that is if we have the number 416, okay? The way that you would read that is 4 and 16 hundredths. So since there's a digit in the hundredths place, you don't say the tenths, okay? Just similarly to when you have like 501, we don't say the word tens, and we don't read that word tens. So that's just to kind of give you a comparison, because I know this is a little bit trickier. Also, keep in mind equivalent fractions. So when we had 1/10 is equivalent to 10 hundredths, because you can multiply, what can you multiply 1 by to get 10? You can multiply 1 by 10 to get 10, and remember, if you do it to the top, you do it to the bottom. And 10 times 10 is 100. So that means 1/10 and 10 tenths are equivalent, just like 1/10 and 10 hundredths are equivalent, okay? So I hope this helps. Remember, I'm available if you have questions, and I love you and I miss you, and I do change my clothes. I recorded both of these videos on the same day. So big air hugs. Bye.